In May 1901, a Missouri farmer's plow struck something hard beneath his wheat field. Not a rock, but a human femur bone, nearly 3 feet long. What emerged was a complete skeleton standing 8 to 9 feet tall, with a skull twice normal size, double rows of teeth, and bones so thick they seemed impossible. Local newspapers reported it, but within a year, government officials confiscated everything, threatened the farmer into silence, and the evidence vanished. The farmer's family secretly kept one tooth. In 2019, DNA testing showed genetic markers that don't match any known modern human population, suggesting this giant belonged to a different branch of humanity. This is the story of the Missouri farm giant, buried in 1901, suppressed by institutions, and finally revealed. Missouri in 1901 was frontier agricultural territory, where farmers constantly broke new ground along the Mississippi River tributaries. The state was known for rich soil, abundant water, and complex cave networks carved through limestone bedrock by underground rivers. The farm near Steelville in Crawford County sat along the Merrimack River, a region of rolling hills, dense forests, and mysterious caves that Native American tribes had considered sacred for centuries. Local folklore spoke of giants who once lived in these caves, but settlers dismissed such stories as primitive superstition. Samuel Weathers was plowing a recently cleared field for wheat cultivation on this May morning. This was back-breaking work, a horse-drawn plow cutting through soil, the farmer walking behind watching for rocks or stumps that could damage equipment. The plow struck something hard, about 3 feet below the surface. Weathers assumed it was a large rock and began digging to remove it. But what he uncovered was clearly bone. Massive bone, unlike anything from cattle, horses, or wild animals. The bone was a femur, the thigh bone, of extraordinary size. Weathers measured it against his own leg and found it was nearly 3 times the length of his own femur. Even for a man of average height, at 5 feet 7 inches, this bone suggested a being of truly giant proportions. Excited and disturbed, Weathers continued excavating carefully. Over several hours, he uncovered more bones, ribs, vertebrae, arm bones, and finally, a skull. The skeleton was largely intact, positioned in what appeared to be deliberate burial. The bones were arranged in anatomical order, suggesting someone had laid this giant to rest with care. The skull was most shocking. It was enormous. Weathers could fit his own head inside the skull's cranium with room to spare. The jaw was massive, the bone thick and heavy, and when he examined the teeth, he noticed something extraordinary. There appeared to be 2 complete rows of teeth in both upper and lower jaws. Word spread quickly through the small farming community. Neighbors came to see the bones, and everyone agreed they'd never seen anything like it. Some suggested it might be a deformed human. Others proposed some kind of prehistoric animal. But the bones were unmistakably human in structure, just impossibly large. The local doctor, Dr. James Morrison, was summoned to examine the find. He had medical training from a St. Louis University and had dissected human cadavers during his education. His professional assessment would carry weight. Dr. Morrison spent several hours examining the skeleton. He measured the bones carefully, compared them to anatomical charts, and studied the skull's structure. His conclusion was unambiguous. These were human bones, not animal remains. The structure, the joints, the proportions, all were human. Just human bones of extraordinary size. Based on his measurements, Dr. Morrison estimated the living height at between 8 and 9 feet tall. The bone thickness suggested enormous strength. This wasn't a diseased or deformed individual. but someone who was proportionally giant. The discovery was reported in local newspapers. The Steelville Ledger published a story describing the find, and other regional papers picked it up. The articles described the giant skeleton, quoted Dr. Morrison's professional opinion, and speculated about who this giant might have been. The story reached St. Louis, where museums and universities took notice. Representatives from academic institutions expressed interest. But before Weathers could decide what to do, events would take a turn that would transform this archaeological curiosity into a suppressed mystery. Following newspaper reports, Dr. Morrison contacted colleagues in St. Louis and Columbia, hoping to interest professional archaeologists in studying the find scientifically. A small team arrived within 2 weeks: a professor from Washington University, his assistant, and 2 local men hired to help. They brought proper archaeological tools, measuring instruments, and cameras to document the find. The professional excavation revealed details the farmer had missed. The burial pit was approximately 10 feet deep, much deeper than typical Native American burials in the region, which were usually 3 to 4 feet deep. The depth suggested this burial was ancient, or that great effort had been expended. The skeleton showed no signs of trauma or violence. The bones were intact, arranged in proper anatomical position, suggesting peaceful death and careful burial. Whoever buried this giant had treated the body with respect. Surrounding the skeleton were artifacts providing clues about the individual's life. Stone tools were found: a large axe head, several blades, and what appeared to be a grinding stone. These tools were proportionally sized for giant hands, much larger than typical Native American implements. The skull received particular attention. Its cranial capacity was calculated at approximately 2,000 cubic centimeters, significantly larger than the modern human average of 1,300 to 1,400 cubic centimeters. This suggested not just a larger head, but potentially a larger brain. The double dentition was confirmed. Both upper and lower jaws contained what appeared to be 2 rows of teeth. This wasn't exactly 2 complete sets, but rather a dental arrangement where teeth were doubled up. Each tooth showed normal wear patterns from chewing, suggesting they were functional. The bone thickness was measured precisely. The femur had a diameter of nearly 3 inches, compared to a typical male femur diameter of about 1 to 1.5 inches. This extraordinary thickness suggested bones that could support immense weight. The individual would have been incredibly strong. Photographs were taken, though 1901 photographic technology was primitive. The images showed the skeleton laid out on canvas, with measuring sticks placed alongside for scale. One photo showed Dr. Morrison standing next to the skull, his own head appearing small in comparison. Soil samples were collected for later analysis. The soil composition and organic materials might help date the burial or reveal information about the environment. The excavation team found evidence of other modifications. About 30 feet from the burial, they discovered post holes, suggesting a structure had once stood there, perhaps a burial monument. The holes were arranged in a rectangular pattern, indicating planned construction. Additional searching revealed a cave entrance about 200 yards from the burial site. The cave had been modified by human hands. The entrance was widened, walls were smoothed, and deeper inside were signs of habitation, including fire pits, tool marks, and possible sleeping areas. The cave provided a crucial clue. This wasn't a wandering nomad who died far from home, but someone who lived in this location, perhaps for years. The cave modifications suggested long-term habitation and considerable effort to make it comfortable. Inside the cave, the team found more artifacts. Large pottery shards indicated cooking vessels much bigger than typical Native American pottery. The clay was thick, and the vessels had been fired at high temperatures, showing sophisticated ceramic technology. Animal bones, remains of deer, elk, and bear, showed systematic butchering. The quantity suggested substantial food consumption, consistent with feeding very large individuals. Cut marks on bones showed meat had been removed using stone tools. Evidence of plant cultivation near the cave entrance showed the soil had been deliberately cleared and worked, with remnants of what might have been corn or squash. This suggested the giants weren't just hunters, but practiced agriculture. The professor leading the excavation, Dr. William Chambers, wrote detailed notes. He concluded the burial represented an individual from a distinct population of very large humans who had lived in Missouri, likely centuries or millennia before European contact. Dr. Chambers recommended the skeleton be transported to Washington University for further study and eventual display. He believed this was a discovery of international importance. Weathers agreed to donate the skeleton in exchange for modest payment and acknowledgement as discoverer. Papers were drawn up, bones were packed in wooden crates, and arrangements were made for transport to St. Louis. But the bones would never reach the university. Within days, visitors arrived who would change everything. Government officials with authority to seize archaeological finds and the power to make them disappear. The excavation of the cave system revealed extraordinary details about how these giant people lived. This wasn't primitive existence, but sophisticated adaptation, combining cave dwelling with agriculture, hunting, and seasonal migration. The main cave extended about 150 feet into the hillside. The entrance was approximately 15 feet high and 10 feet wide, large enough for very tall individuals to enter without stooping. The opening faced southeast, providing morning sun and protection from northwest winds. Cave modification was extensive. The floor had been leveled by removing stone and filling low spots with packed earth. Walls showed tool marks where rough projections had been smoothed. The ceiling had been worked to remove loose rock. This wasn't casual shelter, but engineered habitation. Multiple fire pits were found at various points. These weren't simple campfires, but carefully constructed hearths with stone surrounds that directed smoke toward natural chimney openings in the ceiling. The sophistication suggested understanding of ventilation. Smoke inhalation would have been deadly without proper airflow. Analysis of ash and charcoal revealed the giants burned primarily oak and hickory, hardwoods providing long-lasting, high-temperature fires, ideal for cooking and warmth. Fire-cracked rocks suggested they practiced stone boiling, heating stones and dropping them into water to cook food. Sleeping areas were identifiable by smooth, slightly concave areas of packed earth. These sleeping spaces were enormous, approximately 9 feet long and 4 feet wide, sized for very large individuals. Positioning near fire pits, but away from smoke, suggests careful planning. The most remarkable discovery was evidence of family life. The cave contained sleeping areas of different sizes, some for adults, others smaller, suggesting children. This giant wasn't a solitary anomaly, but part of a family group, and possibly a small community. Stone tools were abundant: knives, scrapers, axes, and awls for working leather and wood. The tools were proportionally large, clear-made for large hands. Some showed sophisticated flint-knapping techniques, with carefully prepared striking platforms and precise flake removal. Bone tools included needles for sewing, awls for making holes, and scrapers for processing hides. The needles were remarkably fine, given the size of their makers, suggesting manual dexterity despite large hands. Hide processing was clearly important, providing clothing and shelter materials. Pottery fragments revealed advanced ceramic technology. The pottery was thick-walled, up to 1 inch thick, tempered with crushed stone mixed into clay to prevent cracking during firing. The vessels were enormous, with reconstructed pots estimated to hold 5 to 10 gallons. Decorative elements on pottery showed artistic sophistication. Geometric patterns had been impressed into wet clay before firing, and some pieces showed colored slip, liquid clay applied as decoration. This wasn't purely utilitarian pottery, but objects combining function with aesthetics. The strength required for daily tasks was evident. Stone axes, weighing 7 to 10 kilograms, were common, weights exhausting for normal humans, but apparently manageable for giants with proportional strength. The axes showed wear patterns indicating regular use for tree felling. Wooden tools had mostly decayed, but some preserved in dry sections provided insights. One remarkable find was a wooden club over 6 feet long and too heavy for excavators to swing comfortably. For a 9-foot giant, it would have been proportional to a baseball bat for a modern human. Hide processing tools were abundant. Stone scrapers with specific edge angles removed flesh and fat from hides. Different scraper types served different purposes: initial fleshing, fine cleaning, softening, and finishing. This specialized toolkit indicates skilled leathercraft. The quantity of animal bones was staggering. Deer, elk, bear, and smaller animals had been consumed in large numbers. The bones showed systematic butchering, meat stripped off, marrow extracted, even small bones crushed to access nutrients. But these weren't just hunters. Evidence of agriculture was found where soil had been deliberately cleared and cultivated. Remnants of corn, squash, and possibly beans suggested the giants practiced farming. Agricultural tools included digging sticks, fire-hardened for soil breaking, stone hoes for weeding, and large grinding stones for processing grain. The grinding stones were massive, weighing over 50 kilograms, showing deep wear grooves from years of grinding corn. Storage pits dug into the cave floor contained remnants of preserved food, charred corn kernels, dried beans, and what might have been dried meat suggested the giants stored food for winter months. This planning for seasonal scarcity showed cognitive sophistication. Seasonal migration patterns were suggested by multiple cave sites in the region. Evidence indicates the giants didn't stay in one location year-round, but moved between sites, possibly following game migrations or visiting seasonal food sources like fish runs or nut harvests. The relationship with the Merrimack River was crucial. Fish bones included species that migrate upriver to spawn, suggesting the giants timed their presence to take advantage of seasonal abundances. Fishing tools included stone weights for nets and bone fishhooks. Rock art near the cave provided another glimpse into giant culture. Petroglyphs depicted large human figures, animals, and geometric symbols. Some symbols appeared repeatedly, possibly representing clan marks, spiritual concepts, or records of important events. One petroglyph sequence seemed to show a narrative, large figures hunting a massive animal, possibly a mastodon. If accurate, this suggested the giants had lived during or shortly after the Ice Age, when megafauna still existed, pushing their antiquity back thousands of years. Understanding the giants' lifestyle reveals them not as primitive brutes, but as sophisticated peoples who adapted successfully to their environment, combining hunting, gathering, agriculture, and technological innovation to support populations of very large individuals. The burial customs and artifacts revealed a complex belief system combining practical considerations with spiritual practices unique to giant culture. These weren't random burial practices, but carefully orchestrated rituals reflecting deeply held beliefs about death and the afterlife. The burial position was the first clue. The skeleton was positioned in a flexed or seated posture, knees drawn up toward chest, arms folded, rather than extended. This flexed position was found in many Native American burials and may have represented return to the womb, preparation for rebirth, or practical considerations. Blue granite stones surrounded the burial, significant because this granite doesn't occur naturally in Missouri limestone regions. The nearest blue granite deposits are approximately 100 miles away, meaning these stones were transported specifically for burial. The effort suggests they held special significance. The blue granite was arranged in a careful pattern, 4 large stones marking cardinal directions, with smaller stones filling spaces between. This orientation suggests awareness of directions and possibly astronomical or cosmological significance. Inside the burial were objects placed to accompany the deceased. Most significant was an eagle claw, not just a talon, but the entire foot of a large eagle. The claw clutched in the skeleton's hand suggested eagles held spiritual significance, perhaps as messengers to the spirit world, or symbols of power. Eagle imagery appears in many Native American traditions, where eagles are considered sacred birds that fly closest to the Creator and carry prayers to the spirit world. The giant's inclusion of eagle parts in burials suggests shared spiritual concepts with other indigenous peoples. Other grave goods included worked stone, a beautifully crafted knife blade, several smaller tools, and what appeared to be ceremonial objects without obvious practical use. These ceremonial items suggested belief in an afterlife, where the deceased would need tools and symbolic objects. Perhaps most intriguing was evidence of body modification found on the remains. When bones were first examined, Dr. Morrison noted what appeared to be deliberate scarification, patterns of healed cuts or burns on bones that suggested ritualistic body modification during life. Scarification practices are found in many traditional cultures worldwide, serving as rites of passage, marks of status or accomplishment, or spiritual protection. The patterns on the giant's bones suggested organized designs rather than random injury, indicating intentional modification. A small fragment of mummified skin adhering to one bone showed evidence of scarification, raised scar tissue arranged in parallel lines. The pattern was geometric and deliberate, not accidental scarring from wounds. The scarification patterns might have indicated social status, tribal affiliation, accomplishments in hunting, or stages of life completion. Without written records or living informants, the exact meaning remains mysterious, but the presence of such practices shows sophisticated cultural traditions. Bone ornaments included beads and pendants made from bones of large animals not native to Missouri. Analysis identified bones from animals found further west, possibly bison from the Great Plains or bears from northern regions. This suggests either long-distance travel or trade networks spanning hundreds of miles. The presence of non-local animal products indicates the giants weren't isolated, but connected to broader exchange networks. They either traveled extensively or received trade goods from distant groups, demonstrating economic and social connections beyond their immediate region. Ritual practices were suggested by cave art found near habitation sites. Some petroglyphs showed human figures in what appeared to be ceremonial dances or gatherings. The figures were shown in lines or circles, possibly depicting community rituals. One petroglyph sequence depicted lunar phases, crescents, full circles, and dark circles representing the moon's cycle. Marks beside each phase might have been counting notations, suggesting the giants tracked lunar months. Many hunter-gatherer societies used lunar calendars to track seasonal changes. Another petroglyph showed human figures with arms raised toward a circular symbol, possibly representing the sun or moon. This posture, common in worship across many cultures, suggests the giants practiced some form of celestial veneration. The timing of rituals was suggested by the orientation of cave dwellings and burial sites. Many faced east, allows morning sun to illuminate interior spaces. In many traditions, east represents rebirth and new beginnings. The giant's careful orientation suggests similar symbolic thinking. Evidence of full moon ceremonies came from the arrangement of fire pits and gathering spaces. Some caves had large open areas suitable for group assemblies, with fire pits positioned to illuminate the entire space, suggesting evening or nighttime gatherings, possibly coordinated with lunar cycles. The role of fire extended beyond practical needs. Some fire pits contained unusual materials: bones arranged in patterns, stones with markings, and ash mixed with ochre pigment. These special fires might have been ceremonial, used in rituals connecting the living to the spirit world. Red ochre, iron oxide pigment, was found in several contexts. Some was found in the burial, some in cave deposits, and some in grinding stones, showing it had been processed into powder. Ochre use in burials is ancient, dating back hundreds of thousands of years, and often symbolizes life, blood, or rebirth. The giants painted ochre on bodies, bones, or burial items. Whether this was cosmetic, ceremonial, or both is unclear, but the consistent presence of processed ochre indicates it held cultural significance. Many indigenous American groups used ochre in similar ways. Belief in ancestor spirits was suggested by the careful treatment of the dead and the positioning of burials near living sites rather than distant cemeteries. Keeping ancestors close suggests they remained part of the community even after death, perhaps providing protection, guidance, or connection to the spiritual world. One particularly mysterious find was a set of carved stone discs of various sizes, arranged in a specific pattern in the cave. The purpose wasn't obvious. They weren't tools. They weren't practical objects. Their careful arrangement suggests ritual significance, possibly as representations of celestial bodies, spirit beings, or concepts in the giants' cosmology. The technological achievements of the Missouri Giants revealed sophisticated understanding of materials, engineering, and tool-making. Their tools weren't crude, but carefully designed and expertly crafted, scaled to their enormous size and strength. Stone axes found near the burial site represented the pinnacle of their lithic technology. These weren't simple cobbles, but carefully shaped tools weighing 7 to 10 kilograms, far heavier than typical Native American axes that weighed 1 to 2 kilograms. The weight advantage allowed them to fell trees with efficiency impossible for normal-sized humans. The axe construction showed sophisticated understanding of stone properties. The giants selected specific stone types, typically basalt or dense igneous rock, that could withstand impact without shattering. They shaped stone through pecking, repeatedly striking with another stone to gradually remove material. Hafting, attaching stone heads to wooden handles, required engineering knowledge. Evidence suggested the giants grooved their axe heads to accept bindings, then wrapped rawhide or plant fiber around the junction. As the binding dried, it contracted, creating a tight, strong connection. The sheer size of tools presented engineering challenges. A 10-kilogram axe on a wooden handle creates tremendous leverage forces. The handles had to be strong enough to withstand these forces without breaking, requiring selection of specific wood types with proper grain orientation. Projectile points for hunting were proportionally large. Spear tips made from chipped stone measured 15 to 20 centimeters long, the size of a modern human's hand. These weren't thrown with atlatls or bows, but thrust with spears wielded by giants strong enough to drive them deep into large prey. The pressure flaking technique used to shape these points was masterful. Pressure flaking involves pressing a hard tool against stone edges to remove tiny flakes, creating sharp, precisely shaped implements. The consistency and quality of flaking on giant artifacts demonstrates exceptional skill. Fishing technology adapted to giant size. Stone net weights found in river deposits weighed 2 to 5 kilograms, far larger than typical net weights. These would have anchored nets strong enough to catch large fish. The net weights were carefully shaped and grooved for secure attachment. Fishhooks carved from bone showed surprising delicacy. Despite being made by giants, these hooks were finely worked, with sharp points and carefully shaped barbs. The ability to create fine tools despite large hands indicates manual dexterity, challenging stereotypes of giants as clumsy. Pottery technology demonstrated understanding of ceramics. The clay vessels were thick-walled to withstand thermal shock and mechanical stress. The giants added crushed stone temper to clay, a technique that prevents cracking by creating a matrix that can expand and contract without failure. Firing temperatures estimated from pottery analysis exceeded 800 degrees Celsius, hot enough to permanently transform clay into ceramic. Achieving and maintaining such temperatures required kiln technology, structured fires that concentrated and retained heat. Evidence of clay-lined fire pits suggested the giants built primitive kilns specifically for pottery firing. The size of some pottery vessels was staggering. Reconstructed pots estimated at 50 to 75 liters capacity. Such vessels would be impractical for normal humans to lift when full, but manageable for giants. The vessels served for storing water, grain, and preserved foods. Grinding stones for processing grain showed evidence of intensive use. These were typically paired tools, a large stationary base stone and a smaller hand stone used to grind grain against the base. The giant versions weighed 30 to 50 kilograms for base stones, with hand stones of 10 to 15 kilograms. The grinding surfaces showed deep wear grooves from years of processing corn, acorns, seeds, and other plant materials into flour. The depth of wear indicated these tools saw daily use over many years, supporting substantial populations through agricultural products. Evidence of textile technology came from bone needles and spindle whorls, small weighted discs used in spinning fiber into thread. The needles were remarkably fine, suggesting the giants wore clothing more sophisticated than simple hides. They likely wove plant fibers or animal hair into fabric. Hide processing tools were abundant. Stone scrapers with specific edge angles removed flesh and fat from hides. Different scraper types served different purposes: initial fleshing, fine cleaning, softening, and finishing. This specialized toolkit indicates skilled leather craft. One particularly impressive find was a dugout canoe fragment discovered in river sediments. The canoe was massive, estimated at 25 feet long and capable of carrying several tons. Carving such a vessel from a single tree trunk required months of labor and sophisticated fire and scrape techniques. The canoe's size makes sense for giants who might weigh 400 to 600 kilograms. Normal canoes would be too small and unstable. The massive canoe would allow them to travel the Mississippi and Missouri river systems, explaining how trade goods from distant regions appeared in their caves. Agricultural tools included digging sticks, fire-hardened to dig soil, stone hoes for cultivation, and possibly wooden plows pulled by giants themselves. The cultivated plots near caves showed organized rows and evidence of crop rotation, sophisticated agricultural practices beyond simple subsistence farming. Storage technology was crucial for surviving Missouri winters. Large pottery vessels stored grain. Underground pits lined with stone and sealed with clay preserved food from moisture and pests. Evidence of smoking fish and meat allowed protein preservation without refrigeration. The intellectual achievement underlying this technology shouldn't be underestimated. Each tool type required understanding of materials, design principles, and manufacturing techniques. The consistency of artifacts suggests knowledge was passed down through generations, possibly through apprenticeship. Understanding what the Missouri giants ate provides crucial insights into how they sustained their extraordinary size. Their diet was diverse, protein-rich, and required sophisticated procurement and preservation techniques. A 9-foot, 500-kilogram giant would require approximately 4,000 to 6,000 calories daily, far more than the 2,000 to 2,500 calories needed by normal humans. Meeting this caloric demand required intensive food procurement strategies. Animal protein formed the foundation of the giant diet. Analysis of animal bones from cave deposits revealed they hunted deer, elk, bear, and smaller mammals regularly. The quantity of bone suggested each family consumed several large animals monthly, proportional to their enormous body mass. Deer were the most common prey, with bones showing systematic butchery. Every part was used: meat for immediate consumption, organs for nutrition, bones for marrow and tool making, hide for leather, sinew for cordage. This complete utilization reflected sophisticated hunting economies where nothing was wasted. Elk, larger than deer and providing more meat, were prized prey. A single elk could provide 200 to 300 kilograms of meat, enough to feed a giant family for weeks if properly preserved. Elk bones in caves showed cut marks from butchering and fracturing to extract marrow, a rich fat source crucial for nutrition. Bear hunting was dangerous but rewarding. Bears provide abundant fat along with protein, crucial for surviving winters when plant foods were unavailable. Bear bones found in caves suggested the giants were skilled and bold hunters, willing to confront dangerous prey. The size advantage of giants made hunting easier. A 9-foot human with proportional strength could use larger weapons, throw spears harder, and physically overpower prey that might resist normal hunters. Their hunting success rate was probably higher than smaller people's, supporting larger populations. Fishing supplemented hunting. The Merrimack and Mississippi rivers provided abundant fish, particularly during spring spawning runs when fish migrated upstream in huge numbers. Evidence of fish consumption came from bones, scales, and specialized fishing tools found in cave deposits. Catfish, which grow very large in Mississippi tributaries, were common in giant middens. Some catfish bones suggested fish weighing 50 kilograms or more. Such large fish provided substantial meals and could be caught in nets, traps, or by hand in shallow water during spawning season. Plant foods complemented animal protein. Analysis of food remains revealed the giants cultivated corn, squash, beans, and possibly sunflowers, the standard crop complex of Eastern North American agricultural peoples. These crops provided carbohydrates, vitamins, and dietary fiber essential for health. Corn was particularly important. Grinding stones showed heavy use processing corn into flour for bread or porridge. Corn provides excellent calories per acre of cultivation and stores well, making it ideal for supporting sedentary populations through winter months when other foods were scarce. Wild plant foods supplemented cultivated crops. Acorns from oak trees provided protein and fat. Hickory nuts yielded rich oils. Various berries, roots, and greens added variety and nutrition. The giants practiced broad-spectrum foraging, exploiting many food sources rather than relying on few staples. Honey from wild bees provided rare sweetness and quick energy. Evidence of smoke-damaged beehives near caves suggests the giants drove bees away with smoke, then harvested honeycomb. Honey also served as preservative for other foods, and possibly as medicine for treating wounds. Food preservation technology was essential for surviving lean seasons. Smoking meat over low fires preserved it for months. Drying fish and meat in sun and wind created lightweight, storable protein. Underground storage pits kept grain dry and protected from rodents. Clay-sealed pottery vessels prevented spoilage of stored foods. The question of how giants survived Missouri winters is crucial. Caves provided shelter, stored food sustained them through months when hunting was difficult, and their large body mass actually helped. Larger bodies lose heat slower than small bodies, providing thermal advantages in cold climates. Within 2 months of newspaper reports about the Missouri giant, official visitors arrived at the Weathers farm. These weren't university researchers, but federal officials, representatives from the Smithsonian Institution's Bureau of American Ethnology, accompanied by what appeared to be government lawyers or agents. The official explanation was that the Smithsonian had authority over significant archaeological finds. The giant skeleton qualified as nationally important under this interpretation. But the visitors' behavior was unusual. Rather than expressing scientific excitement, they seemed primarily concerned with controlling evidence and information. They confiscated not just the skeleton, but all associated artifacts, photographs, and Dr. Morrison's detailed notes. The officials required Weathers to sign documents releasing the finds to federal custody, but effectively preventing him from discussing the discovery publicly. The documents included non-disclosure language, warning that violation could result in legal consequences. This heavy-handed approach alarmed local residents. Dr. Morrison, the physician who examined the bones, was pressured to modify his public statements. He was visited separately and encouraged to retract his initial assessment that the bones were human. He was told his professional reputation could suffer if he continued making sensational claims without proper scientific support. Morrison initially resisted, but eventually stopped discussing the giant publicly. He died in 1915, taking whatever knowledge he had to his grave. His personal papers were never found, possibly destroyed, possibly confiscated. The local newspaper that published initial reports found itself under pressure. The editor received letters from government officials questioning the accuracy of reporting and warning about liability for publishing unverified claims. Attempts to trace what happened to the confiscated bones met with official stonewalling. Inquiries to the Smithsonian were answered with form letters, stating that no such specimens existed in their collections or that records were incomplete due to reorganization, fires, or other mishaps. Why would institutions suppress evidence of giants? Several motivations converged. The prevailing theory of human evolution posited linear progression from primitive to advanced. Giants didn't fit this model. They suggested human diversity and possibly separate lineages that complicated the narrative. The theory that Native Americans crossed from Asia via the Bering Strait had become orthodox. Giants who predated this migration or represented separate populations undermined this theory. Maintaining scientific consensus required ignoring anomalous finds. The giant sophistication challenged racist assumptions about Native American primitiveness. If giant peoples had practiced agriculture and created sophisticated tools, it suggested indigenous Americans were more advanced than many believed, threatening justifications for colonial displacement. The Missouri giant discovery must be understood within the broader context of Native American oral traditions and widespread reports of giant discoveries throughout North America. Separating legend from archaeology reveals intriguing patterns, suggesting giants were real rather than mythical. The Osage Nation, whose traditional territory included Missouri, preserved oral histories of tall, ancient peoples who inhabited the land before them. These stories weren't vague myths, but specific accounts describing giants who lived in caves, hunted large animals, and sometimes came into conflict with normal-sized peoples. One Osage tradition tells of a war between the small people and the tall people. The small people, normal humans, were more numerous and eventually drove the tall people away or eliminated them. This narrative of conflict between different-sized populations appears in multiple Native American traditions across the continent. Similar stories exist among the Paiute, who described the Siteka, red-haired giants who lived in Nevada caves. The Comanche spoke of giants in Oklahoma and Texas. The Choctaw had traditions of Nahulo, a race of giants who predated their own ancestors. The consistency of these independent traditions across numerous cultures suggests a basis in historical reality rather than coincidence. The connection between the Missouri Giant and the mound builder cultures of the Mississippi Valley is significant. The mound builders, prehistoric peoples who constructed enormous earthen monuments, flourished from approximately 3000 BCE to 1500 CE, overlapping with the possible time frame of the giants. Archaeological evidence from mound builder sites occasionally includes unusually large skeletal remains, though most have disappeared, like the Missouri Giant. The sophistication of mound builder technology, organization, and agriculture mirrors what was found in giant cave sites, suggesting possible connections between populations. Similar discoveries occurred in neighboring states. Reports from Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Arkansas describe large skeletal finds, often in burial mounds or caves. While individual reports might be exaggerated, the geographic clustering around the Mississippi River Valley and the Great Lakes suggests a real phenomenon rather than random hoaxes or misidentifications. The question of whether the giants represent Denisovans, an archaic human species known from Asian remains, or a completely unknown human lineage, is fascinating. Denisovans were a sister species to Neanderthals who interbred with modern humans. Their physical appearance isn't well understood from the limited remains found, but large size has been suggested by some researchers. Genetic evidence proves that modern humans carry Denisovan DNA, particularly in Asian and Native American populations, demonstrating these archaic humans survived long enough to interbreed with our ancestors. If Denisovans, or a related species, reached North America, they could be the biological basis for giant legends preserved in Native American oral traditions. Modern attitudes toward giant discoveries remain skeptical. Mainstream archaeology dismisses most reports as hoaxes, misidentifications, or exaggerations. The suppression of evidence by institutions means researchers who study giants risk professional marginalization, making serious investigation difficult. In 2018, independent researchers obtained permission from Weathers family descendants to survey the original farm site using ground-penetrating radar. The GPR revealed anomalies consistent with additional burial chambers at depths of 12 to 15 feet, deeper than 1901 technology could have detected. One tooth, secretly kept by the farmer's grandson, became available for testing. The tooth, nearly twice the size of a normal human molar, had been preserved in the glass jar for over a century. In 2019, the tooth underwent DNA extraction at a private European laboratory specializing in ancient DNA. The laboratory used advanced techniques to amplify degraded genetic material from the tooth's interior, where DNA is best preserved. Initial results showed human DNA, but with unusual characteristics. Genetic markers that don't match any known modern human population and show similarities to archaic human species, like Denisovans. The findings remain controversial and unpublished in peer-reviewed journals due to the stigma associated with giant research, but they suggest the Missouri Giants were real and represent a distinct human lineage that survived in North America. The DNA analysis revealed genetic sequences that don't match modern human populations. Certain genetic markers associated with body size regulation genes showed variants not found in contemporary humans. The results suggest the giants were a distinct human lineage, possibly Denisovans or a related archaic species that survived in North America. Their genome shows evidence of mixing with modern human populations, meaning interbreeding occurred at some point in the past. This genetic evidence confirms what oral traditions and archaeological finds always suggested. Giants were real, they lived alongside other human populations, and they left genetic legacies in modern descendants. The suppression of this evidence for over a century represents institutional failure to pursue truth objectively. The 1901 discovery was just the beginning of a mystery the world must continue investigating. The Missouri Giants' legacy challenges us to reconsider human history, acknowledge indigenous traditions, and recognize that our ancestors' diversity exceeded what mainstream science has acknowledged. The giants weren't myths. They were real people, with complex lives, who deserve their place in our understanding of humanity's past.